It was a cool, crisp morning in Washington, D.C., and the bustling halls of the White House were filled with the usual hum of activity. Usha Vance, the Second Lady of the United States, had always carried herself with grace and dignity. Married to J.D. Vance, the Vice President under the Trump administration, she had a reputation for being poised, intelligent, and compassionate. A former lawyer and a passionate advocate for education and women's rights, Usha had spent much of her life giving back to communities, using her platform to make a real difference. But today, Usha was preparing for an entirely different kind of encounter, one that would change her perspective on life in ways she never expected. Usha had spent the past week attending various events across the country, but she had managed to carve out some time for herself, something she rarely did. She decided to take a brief retreat with a few close friends at a quaint hotel near the Potomac River. As much as she enjoyed the grandeur of political life, Usha longed for moments of simplicity and peace. The hotel was charming with its classic architecture and warm atmosphere. The morning was still young when Usha took a walk along the tree-lined paths outside, her mind wandering. She thought about the challenges her husband faced as vice president, the pressure of the current political climate under President Donald Trump's administration, and the work they were doing to address key issues such as education, healthcare, and national security. As she strolled past a row of open hotel windows, she noticed a figure bent over, tidying up one of the rooms. The woman was a middle-aged African-American with short, curly hair wearing the hotel's uniform. Usha instinctively smiled as she had always respected the hard work of hotel staff who kept the places she visited pristine and welcoming. But something about this woman's movements caught Usha's attention. There was a quiet dignity in her actions, how she made sure every corner of the room was spotless, how she worked diligently with a sense of purpose. The more Usha observed, the more she felt a strange pull, as though there was something familiar about her. Her curiosity piqued. Usha made her way closer. The woman didn't notice her at first, lost in her work. But as Usha approached the door, their eyes met. A brief, almost imperceptible pause hung in the air. "Good morning," Usha said warmly, offering a friendly smile. The woman, startled at first, straightened up and quickly wiped her hands on a towel. Her demeanor was respectful, but there was a hint of wariness in her eyes. It was clear that she had been working in this hotel for a long time, perhaps even too long, and had seen her fair share of people who treated her as nothing more than an invisible part of the hotel's machinery. "Good morning, ma'am," she replied, her voice polite but guarded. Usha's intuition told her that there was something more to this woman's story. A flicker of recognition danced in the back of her mind, but she couldn't quite place it. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," Usha said, her tone gentle. "I just wanted to ask if you've worked here for long?" The woman hesitated for a moment before replying, "Yes, ma'am. Been here a few years now. It pays the bills, you know." There was something about her words that struck Usha deeply. This wasn't just a passing comment. It was the way she said it, with a quiet resignation, as if this was a life she had resigned herself to, but not one she had dreamed of. "I understand," Usha said, nodding sympathetically. "Sometimes life takes us on unexpected paths, doesn't it?" The woman smiled faintly. "Yes, ma'am, it does." Usha's curiosity grew stronger. She had worked hard to get where she was, and she had always valued education as the key to unlocking opportunity. Something about this woman's situation stirred an old memory in her, a memory that brought her back to her childhood. Could this woman be the teacher she had once known? Before Usha could think too much about it, the woman spoke again, a little more confidently this time. "Is there anything else I can do for you, ma'am?" Usha smiled and paused, her heart racing. She took a deep breath and asked the question that had been lingering in her mind. "Excuse me, but have you ever taught at a school in the past?" "I'm sorry, I know this may sound strange, but you look so familiar. Your voice, it reminds me of someone." The woman's eyes widened in surprise. A long silence followed. For a moment, Usha wasn't sure if she had overstepped. But then the woman took a step closer, her expression shifting from one of guarded professionalism to one of deep, hidden emotion. "My name is Mrs. Clarke," she said softly. "And you? You were one of my students." Usha's breath caught in her throat. It was her. Mrs. Clarke, the teacher who had changed Usha's life all those years ago. Mrs. Clarke had taught her in elementary school, and Usha had always credited the teacher with inspiring her passion for learning. The memory flooded back to Usha like a rush of warmth. Mrs. Clarke had been the one to encourage her when she was struggling in school, the one who believed in her potential when no one else did. In that moment, Usha stood frozen, her mind racing as she took in the sight of the woman who had been her guiding light all those years ago, now cleaning hotel rooms to make ends meet. "Mrs. Clarke, is it really you?" Usha asked, her voice trembling with emotion. The teacher nodded slowly, her eyes shimmering with a mixture of pride and sadness. The moment lingered in the air like a heavy silence, charged with memories and emotions that neither Usha nor Mrs. Clarke could easily express. Usha's heart raced as she struggled to reconcile the image of the woman who had shaped her childhood with the reality of the woman standing before her now. "Mrs. Clarke." "I can't believe it," Usha murmured, taking a step closer. Her gaze softened with disbelief. "You were the one who always pushed me to do my best. You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." Mrs. Clarke lowered her head slightly, the edges of her lips turning up in a bittersweet smile. "You were a smart one, Usha. I saw potential in you even when you didn't see it in yourself. You worked hard and it paid off." She paused, the weight of her words hanging in the air. "But, as you can see, life doesn't always turn out the way we plan, does it?" Usha's chest tightened and she felt a knot in her throat. The teacher she had adored, the woman who had made a difference in her life, was standing before her now in a position of servitude, cleaning hotel rooms to make ends meet. "Mrs. Clarke," Usha began, her voice trembling with emotion. "What happened? Why are you here doing this? You should be in a classroom, teaching, making a difference. You deserve so much more." Mrs. Clarke gave a small, rueful laugh. "I used to think that too, Usha. But life doesn't always give us the choices we want. Sometimes it gives us the choices we can live with." She glanced at the room she had been cleaning, a deep sigh escaping her lips. "I had to take care of my family. My husband lost his job and we fell behind on bills. Then my health started to decline and I couldn't afford the treatments. I had to leave teaching because the school couldn't afford to keep me on. So here I am." Usha was speechless for a moment, struggling to comprehend the reality of the situation. It was almost impossible for her to imagine someone like Mrs. Clarke, someone who had touched so many lives, being relegated to this. The injustice of it gnawed at her heart and she couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that surged within her. "I never knew," Usha whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Clarke. I had no idea." Mrs. Clarke placed a hand gently on Usha's arm. "It's not your fault, dear. Life has a way of throwing curveballs at us all, doesn't it? But we learn to adapt to survive. I'm sure you've had your own challenges, being in the spotlight, living in this world of politics. It's not easy either." Usha nodded, but she couldn't stop the feeling of helplessness that filled her. Here was someone who had given so much to her, who had shaped her world, and now she was cleaning hotel rooms for a living. "I don't know what to say," Usha admitted softly. "This just doesn't seem right. You should be honored, Mrs. Clarke. You should be doing what you love, helping young minds grow like you did for me." Mrs. Clarke smiled again, but it was a sad smile, full of quiet understanding. "Usha, life doesn't always hand out rewards for good deeds. Sometimes it just hands you another day to keep going. And we keep going no matter what." There was a long silence between them as Usha absorbed the weight of Mrs. Clarke's words. She could feel the deep sadness and quiet strength radiating from her former teacher, and it stirred something inside her, a determination she had not felt in a long time. "I want to help you," Usha said suddenly, her voice firm yet soft. "I'm going to do something about this. You deserve better than this. I can't let you keep living like this." Mrs. Clarke's eyes widened and she shook her head gently. "Usha, you don't have to do anything. You've got your own life, your own responsibilities. Don't worry about me. I'm just fine." But Usha wasn't convinced. She couldn't stand by and do nothing. This woman, who had been a beacon of hope and wisdom for her, deserved more than the life she had now. Usha was not the type to sit idly by while someone she admired suffered. She had the power, the resources, and the platform to make a difference. She couldn't let this moment pass without taking action. "No," Usha said more firmly this time. "You don't understand. This is personal. You helped shape who I am today, Mrs. Clarke. And I won't forget that. I'm going to help you. I promise." There was a long pause as Mrs. Clarke seemed to weigh Usha's words. Finally, she gave a deep, resigned sigh. "I don't know if there's anything you can do, Usha. But if you're serious, if you really want to help, then I won't stand in your way." Usha's heart swelled with gratitude and determination. She knew that this moment, this unexpected encounter, had set something in motion, something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. Usha didn't yet know how she would help Mrs. Clarke, but she was certain that she would not allow the woman who had inspired her to fade into the background. She had a plan in mind, and it would start with making sure Mrs. Clarke's story was heard. "I'll be back later today," Usha said, her voice filled with resolve. "We'll talk more then." I have some ideas. Mrs. Clarke gave a small, uncertain nod. Thank you, Usha. But I don't want you to make any trouble for yourself. Usha shook her head firmly. I'll handle everything. You just wait and see. As she turned and walked away, Usha's mind was racing with ideas. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was no stranger to fighting for what was right. And today, she had found a new cause, one that would take her back to the roots of what truly mattered, helping others and giving back. Usha's mind raced as she returned to her hotel room. The morning's conversation with Mrs. Clarke weighed heavily on her, and the stark contrast between her former teacher's life and her own felt almost too much to bear. Usha had always been aware of the disparities in society, the haves and the have-nots, the privileged and the underprivileged. But seeing someone who had been such an important part of her own success reduced to cleaning hotel rooms was a stark reminder of how uneven the playing field really was. As she sat by the window overlooking the Potomac River, Usha couldn't help but think of her own journey. She had been lucky, blessed, even to have had opportunities that others could only dream of. Her education had paved the way for her success, and now, as the Second Lady of the United States, she had a platform that most people could only imagine. But what good was it if she didn't use that platform to help those who had given so much but received so little in return? She stood up, pacing the room as ideas began to form in her mind. There was no way she could just walk away from this. She had to help Mrs. Clarke. She owed it to her, and to herself, to make sure that her former teacher's story didn't end with her cleaning hotel rooms. Usha couldn't stand the thought of Mrs. Clarke, a woman of such dignity and integrity, being stuck in this cycle. There was no time to waste. Usha grabbed her phone and began making calls. She had connections in education, in advocacy, and in the political world. She knew that if anyone could make a difference, it was her. She started with the Department of Education, reaching out to people she knew in key positions who might be able to assist. As the hours passed, Usha worked tirelessly. She drafted a proposal to establish a program that would give teachers like Mrs. Clarke the opportunity to get back into the classroom and receive the support they needed to continue their work. It would include scholarships for continuing education, medical support for teachers facing health issues, and a platform for teachers who had been forced out of their jobs to share their stories. While waiting for responses, Usha made calls to her staff, asking them to gather all the relevant information on Mrs. Clarke's situation. She wanted to ensure that no stone was left unturned. Usha wasn't just looking for a quick fix. She was aiming for a lasting change, something that would not only help Mrs. Clarke but would provide opportunities for others in similar situations. As the day wore on, Usha grew more and more resolute. She had reached out to the Department of Education, various educational nonprofits, and even some of the more influential figures in the world of education reform. She wasn't going to let this issue fade into the background. She had seen firsthand how the system could fail people, but now she was determined to use her position to fix it. By the time she was ready to leave the hotel, Usha had a plan. She had secured a meeting with key stakeholders who could help her get this program off the ground. It was just the beginning, but it was a start. Usha met with Mrs. Clarke again later that evening after her shift was over. They sat together in the hotel's small cafe, the soft murmur of other guests creating a quiet backdrop to their conversation. Mrs. Clarke, I've been busy today, Usha said with a determined smile. I've got a proposal in the works and I'm reaching out to some key people in education and advocacy. We're going to make sure that teachers like you get the recognition and support you deserve. Mrs. Clarke's eyes widened in disbelief. You're serious? You really think you can do that? Usha nodded. I'm serious. This isn't just about helping you, it's about creating a system that can help many others. You should never have been put in this position. I'm going to make sure that changes. Tears welled up in Mrs. Clarke's eyes and she struggled to speak for a moment. You really don't have to do this. You've already done so much for me just by remembering me. You don't need to get involved in this. Usha reached across the table and took Mrs. Clarke's hand in hers. I can't just walk away from this, Mrs. Clarke. You gave me the gift of believing in myself and now it's my turn to help you. I won't rest until we fix this. For the first time since they had reunited, Mrs. Clarke's face softened with a mixture of awe and gratitude. She was overcome by the kindness of the woman she had taught so many years ago, and Usha's words seemed to reignite a spark of hope she had long since buried. Thank you, Mrs. Clarke said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. I never thought someone like you would come back into my life and change it all over again. You've given me hope, Usha. Hope that maybe I can make a difference again. Usha smiled, feeling the weight of their conversation settle in her heart. You've already made a difference, Mrs. Clarke. Now it's time for the world to see what you're capable of again. The conversation shifted to the details of the program Usha was working on, but both women knew that this was just the beginning. Usha's commitment to changing the lives of educators like Mrs. Clarke had only just begun, and she was determined to use her position in the Trump administration to push through the necessary changes. As Usha left the cafe later that evening, she felt a sense of fulfillment that was rare for her. She had made a difference in one life, and she knew that this was just the start of something much bigger. Usha's plan had begun to take shape faster than she expected. Within days, her proposal had caught the attention of several high-ranking officials in the Department of Education as well as influential figures in the nonprofit sector. The idea of a program that could help teachers who had been sidelined due to financial struggles, health issues, or other challenges was gaining traction. The idea was simple but revolutionary, a nationwide initiative that would provide financial, educational, and emotional support to teachers who had been forced to leave the profession, especially those like Mrs. Clarke, who had so much to give but had been overlooked by a system that didn't value their contributions. Usha found herself sitting in a high-powered meeting at the White House alongside her staff, educators, and policymakers. The atmosphere in the room was charged with anticipation as she presented her proposal. It was clear that this was not just a project for the Second Lady. It was a call to action that had the potential to reshape the way the United States treated its educators. I'm here today to advocate for a group of people who have given everything to our children, our communities, and our future, Usha began, her voice firm and passionate. Teachers like Mrs. Clarke who devoted their lives to shaping young minds only to find themselves forgotten, sidelined, and left behind. This program is about giving them the second chance they deserve. As Usha spoke, she could see the shifting dynamics in the room. The officials who had been skeptical at first were beginning to warm to the idea. They saw the faces of the teachers who had been affected, and Usha knew that her vision was starting to take root. I've met with several teachers who are struggling, like Mrs. Clarke, who are now forced to clean hotel rooms just to make ends meet, Usha continued. We cannot allow this to continue. We must provide the support they need, whether it's financial aid for medical treatments, opportunities for further education, or programs that allow them to get back into the classroom where they belong. A high-ranking official in the room, one of the senior advisors to President Trump, raised his hand and spoke up. This is an ambitious proposal, Mrs. Vance, but how do you plan to fund it? With the current budget constraints, this could be a tough sell. Usha nodded, fully aware of the challenges ahead. I understand that there are financial concerns, but I believe we can leverage existing programs within the Department of Education, private sector partnerships, and the generosity of philanthropic organizations. The goal is not just to provide short-term assistance, but to create a long-term, sustainable system that benefits teachers, students, and our country as a whole. Her words hung in the air, and Usha could feel the weight of the moment. This wasn't just a political initiative, it was a deeply personal cause. She had spent her entire career advocating for children's education, and now she was using her platform to fight for the very people who had helped her get to where she was today. By the end of the meeting, the room had been transformed. The skeptics had become supporters, and the proposal was approved for further development. Usha's vision for a nationwide teacher support program was officially on its way to becoming a reality. That evening, as she left the White House, Usha felt a surge of accomplishment. She had taken the first step in what would surely be a long journey, but it was a journey worth taking. She knew that there would be obstacles ahead and that the road to implementation wouldn't be smooth. But she was ready. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Mrs. Clarke had been patiently waiting to hear about Usha's progress. When Usha finally returned to share the news, she found the teacher sitting in a small lounge area, her tired eyes lighting up when she saw her. Well? Mrs. Clarke asked eagerly. Did it go well? What did they say? Usha took a seat next to her, a grin spreading across her face. It went better than I could have ever hoped. The program is officially approved to move forward. We're going to get teachers like you the support they need. Mrs. Clarke blinked in disbelief. You really did it? You made this happen? Usha nodded, her heart swelling with pride. It's just the beginning. But now we have a foundation and we're going to build on it. You won't have to clean hotel rooms anymore, Mrs. Clarke. You'll have the opportunity to teach again, if that's what you want. Tears welled up in Mrs. Clarke's eyes as she clutched Usha's hands tightly. I don't know what to say. This is more than I ever dreamed of. I didn't think anyone would care. Usha smiled softly, squeezing her hands. I care, Mrs. Clarke. You cared for me when I needed it most. Now it's my turn to do the same for you. The two women sat in silence for a moment, sharing the unspoken understanding that, despite the challenges ahead, they had both found something truly special in their unexpected reunion. It wasn't just about the program, it was about restoring dignity, opportunity, and hope to someone who had given so much to the world. Over the next few weeks, Usha's initiative began to take shape, with numerous educational leaders and policymakers joining forces to bring the program to life. Mrs. Clarke became a symbol of the program, her story widely shared to highlight the struggles faced by so many teachers in similar situations. Her strength and perseverance inspired others to come forward and share their own stories, and before long, the initiative was gaining national attention. As Usha's initiative gained momentum, the program that had started as a small idea blossomed into a nationwide movement. Teachers across the country began to hear about the support being offered to those who had been sidelined, and the response was overwhelming. Mrs. Clarke, once an unknown figure cleaning hotel rooms, had become the face of the change that was sweeping through the educational system. Her story, shared in national media outlets and social media platforms, struck a chord with millions. People were moved by her sacrifice, her dedication, and her willingness to keep going despite the hardships she had faced. In just a few months, Usha's proposal turned into a robust support system for teachers. The program provided financial relief to those struggling with medical bills or debts. Scholarships for continuing education allowed teachers to earn advanced degrees and certifications, ensuring they could return to the classrooms they had left behind. There were grants for teachers starting over in new professions, and a network of mentors was established to offer guidance, encouragement, and assistance. For Mrs. Clarke, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. She was finally able to step back into a classroom, this time with the full support of the system she had once been forced out of. The joy on her face as she walked into her new classroom on her first day back was indescribable. Usha was there to witness it, standing at the door with a proud smile on her face, knowing that this moment was only the beginning. I never thought this day would come, Mrs. Clarke said, her voice trembling as she looked around the classroom, filled with eager young faces. I never thought I'd be able to teach again. But you made it happen, Usha. You gave me my life back. Usha's heart swelled with pride. You did this, Mrs. Clarke. You earned it. All I did was give you a chance to get back where you belong. The rest is all you. The story of Mrs. Clarke's return to teaching was a beacon of hope for many educators who had thought their dreams were out of reach. Teachers from every corner of the country were applying for the program, eager for the chance to restart their careers, to find new opportunities, and to be recognized for their invaluable work. As Usha continued to champion the cause of teachers, the program expanded. The Trump administration, recognizing the impact it was having, allocated additional funding to support the initiative. What had once been a small grassroots effort had become a flagship program celebrated by educators and students alike. Usha's tireless work had bridged a gap in the system, and now, with the program fully operational, it was clear that her commitment to change had paid off in ways she could never have predicted. One afternoon, as she sat in a meeting with key policymakers discussing the future of the program, Usha received a call from Mrs. Clarke. It had been a few weeks since she had returned to teaching, and Usha had been anxious to hear how things were going. Usha, you have to hear this, Mrs. Clarke said, her voice filled with excitement. I've got a whole class of students who are thriving. And I have to tell you something else. They're not just learning from me, I'm learning from them. They remind me of you, how eager, how hungry to learn. I'm teaching them everything I know, but they're teaching me too. Usha smiled, her heart full. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. You're not just giving them a lesson in academics, Mrs. Clarke, you're teaching them something far more valuable: resilience, perseverance, and hope. You're showing them that no matter where you start, no matter how many obstacles you face, you can always rebuild. You can always start again. Mrs. Clarke's voice softened, almost as if she were on the verge of tears. I'll never be able to thank you enough, Usha. You didn't just help me find my way back to the classroom, you gave me back my sense of purpose. As Usha hung up the phone, she reflected on how far they had come. She had started this journey with one teacher, one story, but now it was about something much bigger. It wasn't just about Mrs. Clarke. It was about all the teachers who had given so much, sacrificed so much, and yet had never received the recognition they deserved. It was about creating a system where they could be supported, valued, and given the tools they needed to succeed. Usha walked into the Oval Office one evening to update President Trump on the program's success. The room was filled with energy as officials and advisors discussed various initiatives, but when Usha began to speak, all eyes were on her. "I'm proud to report, Mr. President," Usha said, "that the teacher support program has been a success. Thousands of teachers who were once overlooked are now receiving the help they need. We've given them the opportunity to return to the classroom, to continue their work, and to find new hope. This program has restored their dignity and helped them build a future." President Trump, who had been listening intently, smiled and gave a nod of approval. "You've done a hell of a job, Usha. This is exactly what we need, practical solutions that actually make a difference. Keep pushing this forward." Usha beamed with pride. "I will, Mr. President. We're just getting started." Later that evening, as Usha sat at her desk, she thought about the road ahead. There was still much work to do, but as she reflected on the changes she had already made, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had not only honored her former teacher's legacy, but she had built something that would impact generations of teachers and students to come. In the face of adversity, Usha Vance had shown the world that one person's determination could change the lives of many. And so, the story of Usha Vance and Mrs. Clarke was just the beginning, a reminder that no matter where life took you, no matter how far you strayed from your dreams, there was always a chance for a second act. And sometimes, with the right support, the second act could be even more extraordinary than the first.